Hi, I'm Patty Dreier, Portage County Executive. Welcome to Portage County Matters. This is a really neat show we have for you today. This is the show to help teach you about your county budget, what the budgeting process is like, what the budget for 2012 has in it in a general sense, and give you some great resources so that you'll be able to better understand and help shape the future of your own community. My guest today is Jennifer Jossie. Jenny is the Finance Director for Portage County, and I have to say one of the most important people, I think. I know you'd love it for me to say that, right?
Thank you.
One of the most important people in county government, your Finance Director. So meet Jenny Jossie. Now, Jenny, what I'd like to do today is to talk first about the finance department itself. You know, let's talk about the function of your department, how large your staff is, the other kinds of things that you spend time doing, because the budget's certainly a significant part of it, but it's not all. So, yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Our department is responsible for the overall financial management and budgeting of Portage County. There's multiple things that we do, but one of the main functions that we have is we provide support to various county departments, to the county executive, to the county board, to other committees. And how we do that is we help them through public policy, decision making based on financial information that we provide, on budget development and other administrative matters. I think in terms of our overall department, we're responsible for all the financial management, all the financial reporting, accounting, which includes payroll and accounts receivable and accounts payable, grant reporting, risk management, which includes our workers' comp program, as well as our general liability and other insurances, and loss control, where we have an effective loss control program.
Audits, right?
Audits
oh
is
my goodness,
another
that's a really big part.
Large part of our department's function. Not only the annual audit and the county's financial statements and single audit, but our department is also responsible for internal audit functions in Portage County and doing reviews of departments and those activities.
Kind of making sure that everything's going as it should be. That
Correct.
we are we're checking and balancing ourselves in this process of running government.
It's a safeguarding system. We want to make sure that we're protecting the assets that Portage County is responsible for and looking for various mechanisms to make sure that we're monitoring those funds and those resources. That's an important role for us.
And I think the one other thing that I'm not sure that I heard in your big long list, and I know that you didn't touch on all of them because there's still so much more, fixed assets. A lot of people don't even know, about how important it is to have good inventories and have a great grasp of all of the physical property that is part of a county government operation.
Correct. We gather information from other departments based on the county's fixed assets, in terms of when we make capital purchases. And for us, that's anything over $5,000. So then we have to track its life and track its whereabouts and report that within our financial statements, the value of those assets.
Yeah.
The other programs that we're also involved in is the investment program. Portage County invests in debt service management.
What is debt service? Let's just put that in everyday terms.
Debt services is for how we finance over a longer period of time, kind of like borrowing funds for various purposes. Most often what we do use debt service for is capital improvement projects. Our office also plays a critical role in capital budgeting and capital planning.
And we get to talk about those a little bit later in the show too, for sure. Well, let's talk about everybody's favorite topic. Are you ready? Taxes. Taxes, everybody's favorite. And one of the things that some people may not understand is that the county tax part of the bill is only one of 5 parts of a tax bill. How about let's just take an opportunity to teach everybody a little bit more, review that a little bit with folks.
The various parts of the tax bill are taxes for the municipality, whether it's a town, city, or village. Also includes the county taxes, our share, the school district, any vocational district, technical college, and then there's other special district taxes or maybe TIF taxes. So there's 5 components to the tax bill. In Portage County, the treasurer's office is responsible for the collection, and our county clerk's office is responsible for the apportionment of county taxes. But we play, our department plays a large role in helping to establish the levy and taxes that the county might be apportioning back to the municipalities.
And yeah, I've seen the list. That's a kind of a whole different view sometime. I think a lot of folks would be interested. It's a little bit more detail than we can offer in the short show today. But how about this? You know, a lot of times when I'm out at listening sessions and so on, I hear people talk about taxes, and they don't necessarily understand that there are limits. This isn't you know, that county government can tax and tax and tax. There are limits that we are bound to live within in the tax world too. Can you talk a little bit about that in a generic sense for us to understand?
Sure. Up until this budgeting year, there's been two tax limits that have been imposed by the state for counties on their operating levies. The one that I'll talk about first is currently suspended through the last state budget cycle for a 2-year cycle. So we don't know if it's going to come back or if it's going to permanently be suspended later on, but that one is the county tax rate limit, and that suspends the tax rate to a level of 1992, where the premise behind that limit is if your equalized valuation goes up and you do have growth within your property values, you can increase your levy for that growth. So it keeps you to a steady rate where you're only increasing your tax rate based on the growth that you have within your community that way. The other one that's still currently in effect, and it was modified a little bit this past year, is the county levy limit. And that limits the county to levy for either the larger of net new growth.
So how much new
construction within the community, or 0%. So in 2012, our net new growth was 0.79%. So that's what we are able to increase the levy on our operating levy. And there's different components of the levy. There's also debt service levy, and that has a limit as well, 5% of equalized valuation. It's actually a rather large amount. But there are limits, but just in a different format. These are the two that actually limit us on our operating expenses.
And I think really the way I would sum it up for listeners of this show today is that there are formulas. You know, you have formulas that come from the state.
Correct.
You have formulas that help us determine how to structure our financial picture to some regard here in our own county, and how to be able to tax, you know, how you can tax, how you balance the act here of running county government and moving forward. And one of the things that I did is when I first came into office, and I was learning a lot of the things that you had to teach me, but also, you know, the other staff teaching me, and getting a grasp of how do we help average everyday citizens better understand their county budget so that, again, they can take a greater part in shaping our future, helping us make decisions. I kind of think about it in terms of 3 bands of a target, all right? And I know it's a very simple way, but you can maybe help clarify this for everybody. But the way I see it with 3 bands of the target is the green part of the target that I have here is what we operate on a daily basis throughout the whole year for county government to offer services like health and human services and public safety services out of the sheriff's department and so on like that. And then we have a little dot in the middle, and again, this isn't any kind of proportion, but that dot is for emergency medical services, so EMS. And so that's another part of our tax pie, if you would, because I always kind of think of it in terms of a pie that you slice up and everybody pays a little slice of the big picture. And then the blue band here is our debt service part. It's what we basically pay for our interest on the loans of the money that we've borrowed for bigger projects in our county. When you put these 3 things together, these 3 bands together, the way I think of it is me as a citizen out there at our tax rate that is for this coming 2012 budget a 5.12. So that means if I have a $100,000 home, I pay $512 of taxes. That's my little piece that cuts across all of these 3 bands of this target, and that's really what I pay for, is my part of the bigger picture of moving Portage County forward, paying for bigger projects, longer range projects, paying for daily operations and services, like services you get out of the courts or services that you get out of the treasurer's office or the register of deeds or veteran services and so on, or also my ambulance services. So let's talk about how big the pie is. What's the big number here in Portage County? Talk numbers with us a little bit.
The total components that make up our tax levy, that make up all those circles that you have here, is $24.7 million.
So this whole size of the pie,
Yeah.
$24.7 million. This is what we levied on the people by taxing them for that one part of the 5-part tax bill in Portage County.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah. Now the size of the budget is really literally, I mean, we have a bigger financial picture than just this piece. So let's talk about that and the amount, which is certainly, what, $105 million or so?
$105 million proposed for 2012. It's a little higher than previously, but because we are looking at a larger borrowing package for 2012.
In other words, this blue part gets a little...
The blue part stays about the same, but because we're going to have those funds, we're going to have those funds ready to spend for capital improvements, it increases our budget on a temporary basis to go out and do those projects. But the blue band will stay steady for taxpayers as we go through the years and pay off that debt service.
So it kind of keeps, what we're really striving to do in being good stewards, I believe anyway, and we share this philosophy for sure, is we want to keep taxes as stable as we can, so that even when you have to build stuff, sometimes roads or whatever, buildings or whatever, that you don't have your taxes go up and down significantly through the year for citizens, because that's really hard for them to manage their own financial pictures at home.
Yeah, when it comes to large-scale projects where we know that they're going to cost us large amounts of money and their life is going to be for, greater than a year, and when you're looking at roads, or if they're well maintained, they're going to last us 25 years. If we're looking at various facility improvements, they're going to last us a good 20, 25 years. So as we go forward and we look at how we're going to finance those types of projects, debt service is a place that we're always looking at, so that we can stretch out the payments over time. We're not trying to fund them all at once, and that's why that debt service band will stay steady, and that's why you don't see fluctuations in your tax rate up and down.
And the other thing that Bill Hanna from your office had taught me the other day when we had a citizen coming in to ask questions about the budget was that, you want to be able to spread the useful life of that infrastructure out over the shoulders of the taxpayers who benefit over time. And so if we paid the whole amount now, then people well beyond us get to benefit, and they didn't have to pay for it. So we spread that out over time, and that just makes it a little bit more of a reasonable package to manage in people's lives too.
That's a common theory. You don't want the responsibility of the taxpayers today be responsible completely for the benefit that future taxpayers get out of those improvements.
Now let's turn our attention to some of the other key words that are part of the big picture. One of the things that I hear a lot about is shared revenues. I'm going to translate it, then I'm going to let you go into the whole technical thing. But the way I think about it, when I hear about shared revenues, like when the governor talks about the state budget, the whole idea of shared revenues is, in my mind, that when I pay my state taxes, the state turns around and says, we're going to distribute some of that to the local communities again, to the local counties, because we're an arm of state government, really. And so then they share some of those tax revenues with us back again, right?
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
So what else would you want to say about shared revenues?
It's state aid to local governments. It's general purpose revenue. It's state shared revenues have some statutory language around them in terms of how they're distributed, how they're calculated. They include things such as utility payments, where utilities taxes are paid back to the state, then those are shared. So there's lots of calculations that are made. Some of it's based on per capita, but it's essentially what you're saying is it's state general purpose revenue that is being shared back with the local units of government, and not only counties, but it's also shared with cities, villages, towns. So we're just one of the local governments that get to benefit from that sharing.
And very interestingly, right, this year in the big news is there were cuts to shared revenues. So
it's getting
that's a big
tighter
one.
and tighter.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
And
getting
one of
harder.
the things in our budget for 2012 is that we had a reduction of something. Again, this is very, very simplified for the sake of the show today, but about $1.2 million in reduction in shared revenues from the state. But we balanced that by finding a way here locally to have our more than 600 employees in Portage County government pick up additional parts of their share of their retirement to the Wisconsin retirement system, and that pretty much became a wash. So that's why we really could maintain I think a whole stable environment during these turbulent times. A really important thing, I think, for all of us.
The general category of shared revenue was cut about 600, but then we also had general transportation aids cuts and state aid cuts to, you know, human services programming, so in a variety of areas. So the general purpose shared revenues was about 600, but and why I categorize that one differently is it doesn't come with any strings attached. A lot of some of our state funds or our state aids come with a purpose tied to it. So general transportation aids comes for transportation services, and that's the only sole purpose you can use it for. But shared revenue, the county has flexibility with in terms of how they want to allocate it and what the community and the county feels are important.
So that's, we could introduce the word discretionary. You know, when you have, because it's always another one. Jenny's full of big vocabulary words. I'm always looking for the regular translation for folks that I meet in the neighborhoods, right? So when we have discretion over how to spend the funds, that's our choice. We make our choices, and the people of Portage County help to guide their elected leaders to help us make the best choices that reflect what they're interested in, if it's really working well, at least in my view.
Correct. Out of the county's $105 million budget, there's about 33 million of it that is discretionary revenue, which that would include the property tax levy amount.
Sure.
That would include shared revenue. That would include sales tax income. That would also include investment income, and then there's some other smaller categories that we also place in that discretionary revenue. But that's what we can make choices behind. In terms of how we want to serve Portage County.
And one of the other points I wanted to make about the 2012 budgets, now let's just dig in a little deeper here, okay? There are a few things that I think are really important for folks to understand. One of them is when I go back to my chart here, for the first time in more than 30 years, we've actually reduced the size. In this year's budget, it's the first time that we reduced the size of the pie, if you would, for the people of the county. And we did that by about $210,000. Now, that is significant. That was a significant accomplishment because we had these other reductions in state money. We continued to tighten it up. We continue to work hard to budget more accurately so that we don't overtax people for what we don't need, to be able to maintain services and anticipate growing needs and keep it steady. So again, I think that's a really big part of our picture. When I look at the whole big set of vocabulary that I think are really important words for us to target, fund balance is another one. And Jenny, could you talk with us, what is fund balance and how does that relate to the word reserves? Because there are lots of questions I hear almost every single week, I think. Somebody's asking questions about county reserves, and there's a lot of misinformation floating around too, so let's get some of it cleared up.
Okay, so this is going to be Fund Balance 101.
Yeah, fund balance translated into everyday language.
A lot of times folks use fund balance and reserves in the same meaning. So they're pretty much the word is exchangeable to mean the same thing. I'll use the word fund balance because that's how we look at it, but when folks talk about reserves, they're talking about the same thing. The other thing that I would say is when people talk about Portage County's fund balance or reserves, a lot of times the recent number out there is $74 million. Portage County has $74 million at its available for spending, and that's not actually correct.
That's not correct.
That
so
is
we
not
hear
correct.
70-some million sitting out there. It's Yeah, just for us to use in a discretionary way, and that's incorrect.
Not correct.
Okay.
Within Portage County, within that $74 million, let me break down a little bit what that number represents.
Okay.
Within Portage County, we have both governmental funds and we have proprietary funds. Our governmental funds are intended to report the activities that government is responsible to provide, which are primarily funded by taxes and intergovernmental revenues. So state grants, federal grants, intergovernmental agreements, those types of services. We also have proprietary funds, which are our enterprise or business funds, and those are used to report activities that you normally see found in the private sector. And the three entities that we have in Portage County are the Healthcare Center, the Highway Department, and the Solid Waste Department. Within that, we also have a couple service departments within the county that we treat more like a proprietary fund. There are internal service funds.
Like
that would be like
information technology, our computers,
our
or
health
personnel
insurance fund,
services.
Our workers' compensation fund, where they're kind of chargebacks for services and allocated to those programs. If we were to look at that $74 million figure, and I'm just going to look at my notes here because I want to make sure I give you the right numbers. Out of that $74 million, $55 million, almost $56 million is from the governmental fund side. The remaining balance of just almost $19 million is on the business type side, is on the proprietary fund side. Those two categories are reported in completely different fashions.
Okay.
When we talk about the governmental side, we're trying to measure liquidity and we're trying to measure what the fund balance is. It's a liquid factor, so we look at some of the assets, some of the liabilities to get to that number. When we look at the business side, we look at all the assets. We look at all the capital investments and long-term debt that are associated with it.
Just like a regular business.
Just like a normal business. So we're looking at net assets, we're looking at net worth, we're looking at two different things. Well, the $74 million are those two numbers put together. So if I tell you just a little bit more about on the governmental side, the $55 million, what does that represent?
Yep.
It represents some non-spendable resources. For example, our investment in the Central Wisconsin Airport is about just over $12 million. So that's not spendable. It's not something that we can go out and use. It also represents restricted fund balance, which would be restrictions that are placed on externally, not by the county or the finance committee. For example, various grantors, endowments. They're restricted purposes that we have to meet some specific purpose for it. We can also be restricted by the law or by other regulations.
But when we get to the bottom of it, how much is discretionary in those reserves?
We have committed and assigned balances, and those are determined by the county. The county board can commit fund balances. That is approximately $23 million. And then the unassigned, which is kind of what is left for unanticipated needs or contingencies or disasters, that's about $13.5 million.
So it just really clears it up. I know it's complicated, it still continues to be, but how about this, for the sake of, I know we have a few minutes in the show, we're going to leave reserves right now. Now let's go on to capital projects quickly. Then we're going to zero into just a couple of other things about how the budget process works in Portage County too. Capital projects, when we talk about that, that's any project $25,000 or more. In other words, infrastructure stuff, like it could be a building, it could be a technology, it could be a big plow truck for the highway department. And we do some different kind of planning for capital projects. But in the 2012 budget, we've included, back to the pie here, we've included in this green band of the pie, we've included $400,000 of capital projects right there. And we're working ourselves up to be able to put a whole $1 million in this piece of the operating budget so that it's more sustainable for our future. Instead of borrowing for all of those capital projects, since I've come into office, we've continued to increase the amount by $100,000 each year of how much is in this green band, this operating budget of our full tax pie. County tax pie. So that's a significant thing. But when we look at our borrowing for 2012 and beyond, We've got a 3-year borrowing package that we're working on, and it's at this particular time of taping. This is before the final budget hearing, so things could change. But anyway, we're looking at an $8.6 million borrowing package. $7 million of those projects would be highway projects, and we talked a little bit about highway. We don't have time to go into too much detail, but why borrow for highway, and why not then put $7 million in your operating budget instead? Let's just talk about that. I know the answer, but let's teach everybody else.
One of the things that we look at with highway projects is we look at size. We look at is it a new construction project? Is it just a maintenance project? And how are we going to finance those larger scale projects? The projects that we included in the $8.6 million borrowing package would be projects that are kind of outside the county's normal maintenance routine kind of activities. That's how we view our operating budget for highway.
And we'll
so
be
these
paving.
are beyond that.
And we're going to be paving something like a little over 6 miles of road in 2012. Just to give you an idea, you know, wow, you don't get very far on a $1 million bucks, let's just say, when it comes to the cost of fossil fuels and so on and so forth these days.
The routine paving and mill and paving kinds of activities, as well as winter maintenance, those are all normal activities within the highway operating budget. The things that we have within the capital improvement plan for highway, these are larger scale, big construction projects. And some of these have been on deck and in planning for multiple years now.
How about that fun fact you were telling me about yesterday? What's the net value of our county road infrastructure? We have 426 miles of county road in Portage County. What's the net value of those roads?
Our capital assets for highway infrastructure is $114 million. Our total capital assets for all of Portage County are $189 million.
Unbelievable, huh? Wow. So what we're really doing when we have capital projects that are highway projects, some would misunderstand sometimes, but we're really maintaining our investments. These are very serious investments in our net worth in the county, in our economic climates, in our health and safety, in order for ambulances to get quickly to the scene and so on and so forth. You need really good roads, but you got to balance that in the bigger picture. And I guess, you know, we have a couple more minutes left. I know that we have a budget process we go through on an annual basis, and we work hard for sustainable budgets and making sure, and you've been really, really helpful in that. And I think what I want to do is to jump to the piece that says, I want to sum up a little bit about our 2012 budget. And so we kept our county tax levy flat for 2012. We've reduced the size of the budget pie for the first time in 30 years, or more than 30 years, because I don't even know how far back. I haven't gone back into that other data yet. We've built $100,000 more of capital projects into our operating budget, which makes us live more within our means in a more sustainable way. We've retained jobs. We've retained all core services. And we have charted a new course by sharing staff across our parks and our highway departments. These are significant accomplishments in our 2012 budget year. I hope that citizens who are watching the show will go to the Portage County website and check out what the budget presentation looks like when I presented the budget, and also look at the budget document. We're talking about a significantly large document. This is only part of it. The Health and Human Services budget is a whole nother binder, but it gives you an idea of the complexity, but also I think we've given you a good start to understand it. What I wanted to do, Jenny, is to make sure that as we go forward, that you know how much I appreciate what you do. I couldn't do my best job for folks here in Portage County if you didn't help me understand better how all of these pieces fit, and also your whole staff over at the finance department. It's a critical part of county government, and I really appreciate what you do to help us navigate through these times, because we've kept the county stable in these times. I think that's an absolute critical about now. I'm really, really proud of that result. And anyway, let you have some parting words here too. Any other way that you want to sum up what county budgets and finance departments are all about?
Well, I'm very fortunate because I do have an excellent staff who support our department in a variety of many ways that help us do the financial reporting and the budgeting that we do. So I think We're looking forward to future budgets, making the budget document a little bit better for taxpayers to read.
Made it a lot better for sure.
And as we go forward, because our goal is to make sure that the information is out there for people to read and understand. So
thank you so very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for joining us today, and I hope that we helped you learn a lot more about how you can get involved in helping us shape the future through your county budget, which is the way that our visions live through the year in the plan that we have for our future. Thanks.